Hello and welcome to the first episode of this year of To The Point. I'm Vishal, Dahiya, and the government's premier policy think tank, that is National Institution for Transforming India, or as we know it, Niti Aayog, is completing 5 years of its existence. There's been a lot of development in these 5 years, some landmark achievements there as well, and to understand about this 5-year journey and also to know what exactly are the future plans as far as Niti Aayog is concerned, we have with us none other than the Vice Chairperson of Niti Aayog, Dr. Rajiv Kumar with us. Welcome to Rajya Sabha TV, sir. And let's begin straight away with the 5-year journey. There have been several policy initiatives which have been taken by Niti Aayog in terms of advising the government, different ministries, and forming different platforms as well on several aspects. But from your perspective, how do you summarize these 5 years and what's the most key aspects in terms of those policy ideas which have come from Niti Aayog?
Thanks, Vishal. And I think the first thing that I want to mention is that it's a very exciting thing to work in a young and a new organization. Niti Aayog, as you can imagine, is the youngest of the government organizations, which has been created because of the Prime Minister's vision in 2015. And therefore, one has had the chance to, in some sense, give it shape and give it its culture and substance under the guidance, of course, of the Prime Minister. So it's been a very exciting journey for me since I joined Niti Aayog, and same for the organization. And within 5 years, I think it's come a long way. Long way from what some people may have expected it to be as a successor of the Planning Commission. And the first thing that I need to emphasize, therefore, is that there is no similarity at all between the erstwhile Planning Commission and the Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog has the power of ideas and not the power of financial resources, which the Planning Commission earlier had. And that's the job that we are seeking to fulfill as the premier think tank.
So it's the ideation hub.
It's the ideation hub. It's what I say is like a funnel with its big mouth open towards the civic society, towards the academicians, towards the experts, to get new ideas and input into the system, and then to see that they are followed up on it. And in that respect, though immodest, I must confess that we have achieved a fair bit, in the last 5 years. The most important, I think, has been to set about a competitive good governance among the states.
Okay.
I would give that the primacy of space, because and for that what we've done is to bring out several indices across different sectors, and these are on water, on health, on school quality education, on nourishment, on SDGs, etc., where we rank the states. And we rank the states in order to encourage them and foster a sense of competition among them, and so that the governance can be improved from the state upwards.
The aspect of competitive federalism.
Competitive federalism. And the second aspect of that is that of cooperative federalism, where we are trying to pick out the best practices from across the country and then replicate them in other states. And so that's the other big thing that's happened. The one other big platform program that we've launched, as you would imagine, is the Aspirational Districts program, where we have identified 112 districts. This was a program led, conceived by the Prime Minister. And what we've done is that these are the 112 districts which are unfortunately the most backward of the districts among in the country. And the idea is that if we can lift these 112 to the national averages by improving convergence at the ground level, at the district level, by improving all their indices, the human development indices, etc., then we will improve the overall national average in any case. So this is the whole thought about bottom of the pyramid, or the last of the queue, or those who have left behind. So we want to focus on them, and we want to focus on them so that it sets about a new culture of implementation on the ground to improve actual indices which are monitored pretty much daily.
Okay.
So there are 49 indices that we are monitoring on a sort of regular basis, and the districts therefore are now competing amongst each other and to say as to how they go forward. We also got some incentives for them. So that's the other big program that we've got. The last one that I think I should mention is there, because it has set about a huge brought about a completely new initiative and excitement, is our work on water management.
Okay.
And our the water index that we brought out last year. has created a completely different sort of awareness about the about this situation, the water, the critical water situation in our country. And now, as you know, there is a new Ministry of Jal Shakti that's been constituted after that, and they've now got a massive 3,60,000 program, not only to bring water to every household, but a 10,000 crore program to conserve groundwater. So that's, those are
the Atal Bhujal Yojana and the Har Ghar Jal Yojana.
Har Ghar mein Jal, Har Ghar mein Jal. So those yojanas. So I think that's been something most very satisfying. But there are a lot of other initiatives that we have taken, and I'm glad to say that we have been able to contribute significantly to new initiatives and ideas in the government.
Okay, let me bring you, on a few specific of these initiatives. And since you spoke about 49 indices in the competitive federalism, the recent index which has been released is the SDG index. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals and the target which we have set ourselves to be achieved in the next few years, how do you see things moving from here onwards, and what needs to be done? Because yes, there has been marked improvement in several aspects, but there are other aspects where a lot needs to be done.
Absolutely, Vishal, because one thing that we must all realize, that the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, which is to achieve these SDG targets, the under 17 heads by 2030, will not be achieved if India does not achieve them. 1/6 of the humanity lives here, and a large number of, unfortunately, the poor people, and not the are now our citizens. So India is at the center of everybody's eyes globally as to how we will do on the SDGs, and which is why we are taking the SDGs so seriously. And this is the second index that we brought out yesterday. And you would have seen there, the big news there is that none of our states now is below the level of 50. Everybody is halfway, above the halfway mark. And I think that is, that's a major achievement, because that means that you can, now pull them up even further. We are the only country which has got a sub-national index for SDGs anywhere in the world, and this was brought out at the United Nations General Assembly in July this year. Now, on the SDGs, I think we have established a portal, a dynamic portal dashboard for SDGs, for everybody can see whatever is going on. We want to replicate that in every state, and then we want the states to get the districts to start monitoring the SDGs, and the indicators there. So we've got 301 indicators which have been set up by the Ministry of Statistics, of which this index covers 100. So in the next step, we want to make it even wider, the coverage even wider, and the coverage deeper, so that it can go down to the district level. So the SDG index is going to be, is going to be the main driving force for monitoring and for getting the states to compete on that index, and thereby assuring that India will achieve the 2030 targets well in time, as its commitment to removing global poverty and its commitment to achieving global sustainability.
Okay, you mentioned one more aspect, Dr. Kumar, and that is the challenge of water, and how the Niti Aayog has worked on several aspects, made some policy suggestions, and that is translated into policies being formulated. A related subject or related aspect to the water is agriculture. Now, when we look at agriculture, and there have been initiatives by the government as well to try and go ahead and double farmers' income, also give farmers that much push or that much help as is required. But in terms of, to do that, to achieve those targets, we need to look at other solutions as well to try and make farming more profitable. How would you think, several aspects which have been worked on that?
This is such an important issue, Vijay, such an important issue, and a complex one at that. And you know that 92% of all the water in the country is used in agriculture. And we use 3 times the water per crop as is used in Israel and in some of the other countries. So we are very wasteful in the use of water in our agriculture, and we need to change that completely. That apart, what we also see is that our costs of agriculture production continue to rise with the higher and higher increased use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, weedicides, etc. And this forced the farmers to take the loans. and the return on these inputs is not rising commensurately because there is a declining return. So the key is to bring down the costs in agriculture, because unless we bring down the cost, the farmer's income will not be doubled. The current policy that we've had about letting the cost rise and then giving the farmer the minimum support price has resulted in a stock of 60 million tons of food grains, because the farmers are just producing that, while what we need today is much greater diversity. China consumes twice the amount of vegetables that we consume, and that is where we need to go. Now, how is all this going to come about? And this is where I think the Prime Minister's call of doubling the farmer's income is so much more important than doubling farming output. Now, my own thing is, I am emphasizing now that we should try out the chemical-free agriculture model, which is also known as the zero-budget natural farming model, or the Subhash Palekar natural farming model, which actually eliminates the use of all chemicals in agriculture and makes our earth, makes our soil come alive again. Now, this has been tried out. There are now more than 20 lakh farmers who are trying it out successfully. I have seen them with my own eyes. I have met them. I have interacted with them, and there is a growing enthusiasm about this. My appeal actually, therefore, to all my agro scientists at the moment is to test the validity of this experiment, and to collect the evidence on this, and not pronounce judgment, before that. Because I've found to my dismay that some of my colleagues and some of my, in the community have already sort of taken a view on this farming as to that it will not be able to ensure food security for the country. I beg to differ. I think this is the way forward, where not only will we achieve food security, but will also ensure that we don't consume the harmful materials that go to us through all these chemicals that we are using. So that's a big initiative that Niti Aayog has been interested in, and will continue to push in the coming years, because I think let me just take a minute again. This is the only method by which you are going to sequester the carbon in the atmosphere into the soil. Everywhere that this has been used, the amount of organic carbon in the soil has increased many folds in farms from 0.3 to 0.8 and to above 1%. That is going to help the environment hugely.
So it serves dual purpose, you're saying?
Amazingly dual purpose, because it is the best weapon against climate change and reducing carbon in the atmosphere, and it reduces the amount of water that you're using by about a quarter. So you only use 1/4 of the water, because the water retention capability of the soil increases, and the water doesn't just simply run off. And the plants which are growing through this method are able to also fix some water from the atmosphere, because atmosphere contains more water than there is available on the surface and the ground. If you can therefore achieve all of these multiple objectives by following, by following what is now begun to be known as, the Indian traditional farming practices, which is, the Indian natural farming practices, I think we will achieve a lot.
Okay, well, so this seems a very interesting aspect out there. So any plans or any policy to go ahead and ensure that this can be replicated on a larger scale? You say, there is a set of farmers which are working on it, but for others to understand it, or for people at a large level to understand it, this needs to be replicated further. So any plans or any, a policy draft being made by Niti Aayog, or the Aayog might be working with the ministry concerned that yes, this can be replicated further?
Absolutely. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, and I am happy to let you know that we had a meeting of the farmers themselves who are practicing different forms of natural farming, and the Minister of Agriculture was here himself to listen to them, to understand what is the validity of all this. Ministry of Agriculture is hopefully going to be preparing a policy paper on this to be able to hold the farmers in making this transition. Because what it requires is, because farmers for the last 30 years have grown up on biochemical revolution called the Green Revolution. Now for them to make this transition, our Krishi Vikas Kendras, our Atma Yojana, our state agricultural departments, the NABARD, everybody has to be brought into the act, and our ICAR, to say the last but not the least, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. They should be leading the battle They should be leading the initiative by doing the testing and actually validating these experiences, because the moment you validate, the farmer will take it up in a big way. Once they take it up, what you need is hand holding and training, and that is where government help could be very useful in scaling this up.
Okay, that brings us to the other aspect, and that is also very significantly important there. That's health. On the health aspect, be it the nutrition or the medicine aspect, the policy with regard to the medicine, specifically the integrated medicine, how are we going ahead as in Niti Aayog? Is there some draft when we're talking about a regulator to bring all medicines under one regulatory regime? How will it work? Because it is quite important to ensure that everybody has that access to the health benefits.
These are early days yet, and therefore, the journey has just begun. The challenge to me came from the fact that Chinese have actually got US FDA approval for about half a dozen of their traditional medicines, which are now regularly prescribed in the US. And the fact that the National Institute of Health in the US has now prescribed yoga and Ayurveda as one of the remission post-cancer sort of treatments, and they've seen that it improves and the fact that in Ayurveda you have seen a large number of people who are healed by it, but the critical empirical evidence does not exist. So what we are trying to do are two or three things at the same time. One is that we have launched a project with the Ayush Ministry to have a set of research studies and get the funding from the government to collect the scientific empirical evidence on all the Ayurvedic treatments, traditional and other traditional medicines, to collect a body of evidence that then validate them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I've asked people like Dr. H. Nagendra, along with Dr. Rajesh Bhatkar, who used to be he's the father of our Param supercomputer, who is now very interested in Indian traditional medicine, to prepare a vision document as to how we see the mainstreaming of the Indian traditional medicine along with the modern, so-called modern medicine, because the fact now recognized all over the world is that new breakthroughs in all of this will come through bioorganics. It will come through what we call the life sciences, and which is where all of these things have a big contribution to make. The third thing that we have done is that we have set up a committee comprising of the best Indian traditional medicine practitioners along with the modern medicine practitioners, for example, the Institute of Biliary Sciences, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and others, to come together and start discussing with each other how they can collaborate on certain, addressing certain disease patterns like diabetes, like hypertension, like arthritis, and like some of the diseases related to your, to the food system, to your digestive system. Okay. So they are now beginning to collaborate, talk with each other. My ambition is that we will have a vision, and then we'll follow it up with certain interdisciplinary initiatives and collect scientific evidence at the same time to mainstream Indian medicine into our treatment, and now as a result of which 15,000 health and wellness centers will be managed by the Department of Ayush. So that's a very big beginning. Finally, I hope to achieve what the Chinese have already achieved, which is an integrated curriculum for medicine. That in the 5 years that you study medicine, the first 2 years, every student should be studying all the systems that are there. All the Indian traditional medicinal system, which is whether it's Ayush, Siddha, Unani, homeopathy, and also the modern medicine, they should all be studying all of them. And in the third year, they should make a choice as to which, where they want to go, into which science. What this will achieve is a seamless interaction, because even those who are doing, let's say, Ayurveda would know about the physiology and the anatomy and the pathology and so on. And so the other side, the so-called modern doctors would now feel much more comfortable interacting with them. And that is where I expect the major research breakthroughs to come in the coming year.
And the ultimate beneficiary will be the common people, those who need to go ahead and take the benefit of these health services. That brings us to another important aspect, which is a very important part and parcel of our lives today. That's technology. And when we talk about technology, the artificial intelligence, the AI, Niti Aayog is working on that as well, and there have been some quite interesting initiatives taken along with the other stakeholder ministries as well. Where are we as far as artificial intelligence and its use or its implications in our daily lives, and what's the plan from here onwards?
This is one area, this is one technology which is bound to affect every aspect of our life going forward. And there are some countries like the US and China which have taken a huge lead, and they are now focusing huge amounts of resources on this area because as I said, from banking to medicine and consumption and malls, artificial intelligence is going to be all pervasive.
In fact, everything we spoke in the last 20 minutes, AI or technology has some role to play there.
So therefore, Niti Aayog has prepared a strategy document on artificial intelligence, and that charts out not only our vision or our objective, but also the strategy that we will follow. According to this, has been approved by the cabinet, and so now we are in the process of implementing this in collaboration with METI, which is the Ministry of Information Technology. What we want to do now is to set up in centers of excellence, about 6 or 8 centers of excellence, and also to develop the cloud, the entire cloud, sort of iCloud, what we call Indravat, I think that's what it's called. So the focus, the idea really is now to make sure that we can collaborate across ministries in order to develop certain data streams, because the basic fundamental input for all of this is big data. The more data that you can generate and the more data that you can bring together, the better off you are in.
And data is the soul of AI.
And data is the new oil, as it were. So what we're trying to do is to create, this huge data portal, the INDAP, as it were, the India National Data Portal, where we will collect all the data from everywhere into one place, so that it can be made, available to those who are practicing, doing the AI. That is one part of it. The second part of it is that we are collaborating with leading research institutes in Japan and in some other countries to make sure that we can use their advances into making use of this data and coming up with AI solutions for our country. The biggest challenge, though, Vishal, is that we have to make sure that there is no trade-off between AI and employment. Because that's the biggest fear, as it were, that will AI replace not just routine mental but also complex mental functions.
And how do we intend to tackle that challenge? Because that's a very
it's a very formidable challenge. It's a very formidable challenge, and I think the way to tackle it would be, one, to put a huge emphasis on skill formation, to be forward looking in our skills, to be bringing AI and data management into the basic curriculum of our secondary and higher education systems, and also to make sure that AI enabled services become the predominant feature of life. So what you can do therefore is to get into what is called mass customization. So you can customize, but on a mass level, which requires the combination of human talent along with AI.
Okay.
So that's the challenge that we meet, and I think the way we are working together, given our collaboration with private enterprise, and that's, by the way, the other very big thing that Niti Aayog has been emphasizing, which is to bring private enterprise middle and center of all our initiatives. Because even in the case of AI, for example, it will be them who will be applying it, who will be developing it, and because it will be employing millions of people, and unless the private enterprise takes it over and becomes deeply involved, we won't be able to succeed.
Okay, so both the development of AI as well as skill development will have to go hand in hand to ensure that this is a success. That brings us to the last question, Dr. Kumar, and that is about the strategy for New India at the rate 75. That is when India completes 75 years of its independence. Now, some of these aspects which we spoke about will definitely be very integral and important aspects of it. But apart from these, what else will constitute that strategy for New India?
No, we've brought out a document already. It's called the Strategy for New India at 75, and it has 41 chapters. Each chapter is 1,500 words, and each chapter has got the same structure, which is the current status, the challenges, the way forward. So we have spelled many things out, and many ministries, I'm glad to say, are now using that to create their own visions for 2025, which is the age of which is when India will be 75. Mm-hmm. We are now taking the next step in trying to outline the vision for India when it is celebrating its 100th year of independence for 2047. Okay. Because that is that where we want that, and we are doing some econometric projections to see as to where we will be at that stage. And the initial estimates are that we will be the third, if not the second largest economy in the world in PPP terms. If we achieve what's a very achievable rate of growth going forward. Mm-hmm. And within that context of India at 2047, we are developing a detailed strategy for India in 2035. Okay. Because that's 15 years from now, and 15 years are long enough for us to change many ways of doing things. And what we are finding, Vishal, is that business as usual will not do. Given the technological turbulence that we have all around us, given the exploding aspirations of our very young population that we have, given the fact that next 20 years are the period where we can actually really take advantage of our demographic dividend, we will have to be thinking out of the box in many areas. And out of the box implies thinking horizontally in many areas. What we need in our country now at the moment, and this is what we will emphasize, is to think across silos, is to bring across convergence within the different levels of the government, the central, the state, the third tier, urban local bodies, the Panchayat Raj institutions. All of us have to converge towards some goals, either water or agriculture or medicine. Same thing across ministries and departments. Okay. You can, for example, Namami Gange or Swachh Bharat or Swasth Bharat. All of these cannot be achieved if we work in silos, because we need things to converge. And this is where I think the Prime Minister has always led from the front, that he has created these groups of secretaries, which are from very different departments, but then for example, all the infrastructure people are beginning to think together. And water and agriculture and fertilizers are all beginning to think together, because this interministerial convergence is also going to be the key. So a new paradigm is needed in policy making. A new paradigm is needed also in policy implementation. Okay. And if we do that, as we're going to elaborate in our vision document, I'm sure that India will achieve, being the second largest economy in the world in PPP terms. Okay,
so not only convergence of ideas, but also the convergence of efforts from all the stakeholders. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for being with us, and many wishes for the new year, both in terms of the planning as far as Niti Aayog is concerned, and the long-term aspect of it, thinking out of the box for the planners, as you pointed out. So that was the Vice Chairperson of Niti Aayog, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, clearly spelling out the very fact that the planners will have to think out of the box here, and only convergence of ideas won't work, but the convergence of efforts to ensure that these policies, these plans are implemented on the ground. That's all from us in this episode of To The Point, and many New Year wishes to you as well from me and my entire team. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.